Ink Ribbon.
Throughout the history of video games, we have seen a lot of controllers. Some good, some bad, and some are just ugly. Today on Ink Ribbon, we're focusing on the worst controller designs ever made. These are the controllers that hurt to look at and in some cases hurt to even hold. Let's get started.
Number 10.
The Xbox controller. The original Xbox was a powerhouse of a system. Not only was the console big, but the controller was too. In fact, most kids couldn't even properly hold the controller because of its size. This also includes people of smaller stature and people who have smaller hands. While Xbox has drastically improved their controllers over time, we can't forget this Goliath.
Number 9.
PlayStation Move controller. Playing video games in VR is really cool, but you kinda look like a dork while you do it. Some controllers, like the Vive, have helped things look more hip and cool with their handheld motion controllers, while the PlayStation recycled these things from the ill-fated PS3 tech of the same name. Absolutely no one looks cool using these. Waving around sticks with light-up balls on the ends looks lame, even if you're a child. On top of this, Sony wasted a great opportunity to add analog sticks, directional buttons, or any sort of improvement from the original. Even the charge ports aren't the same as the PS4 controllers. Hopefully Sony will update this tech, but it probably won't happen anytime soon.
Number 8.
The GameCube ASCII controller. When incorporating functionality into your design, you usually consider things like practicality and comfort. Well, Nintendo didn't care about either of those when it created the keyboard-inclusive ASCII controller. Made almost exclusively for Phantasy Star Online, this controller features a full-sized keyboard where the pause button should be. While it's cool to have the ability to type full messages, the side effect of having to keep your hands at such an awkward distance apart sort of canceled it out. Holding this thing for too long tended to cause wrist and elbow pain, as well as arm cramps. Couldn't they have just made a keyboard that plugged into the controller port too?
Number 7.
Resident Evil 4 Chainsaw controller. Aside from costing more than the game itself, this RE4 edition controller was shaped like a chainsaw. Sort of. Universally dubbed as awkward and uncomfortable, this controller probably serves a better purpose as a conversation starter than as a gamepad. Also, the controller doesn't make a whole lot of sense since Leon is running from the chainsaws and never once uses one.
Number 6.
Wii Bowling Ball controller. So for most people who first played the Wii Bowling was a fun little minigame that you played for about 5 minutes before you moved on to other games. For other people, Wii Bowling is pretty much the only reason they own a Wii. Apparently, the love of Wii Bowling was so big that someone felt the need to create a controller shaped like a bowling ball. As the Wii's controls are infamously not 100% accurate, the bowling ball didn't do much to help with the accuracy of bowling. What it did help to do is break a lot of TVs when children and adults alike accidentally hurled it towards the screen.
Number 5.
Original PS1 controllers. The PlayStation controller has been hailed as one of the best controller designs in gaming history, and this shows as it's still being used today, 4 generations later. But this almost wasn't the case. The original concepts for the PlayStation controller were frightening, almost looking like mutations gone wrong. Among the designs were several Super Nintendo-inspired controllers that look as ugly as they do uncomfortable. Thankfully, none of these were ever released past the prototype stage, all being replaced with the final controller we know and love by the time the PS1 was released. Are you enjoying this video? Then hit subscribe, it's just a few clicks and it really helps out my channel. Okay, back to the video.
Number 4.
Mad Catz GameCube controller. If you've ever wondered what it's like to have a Vietnam flashback, these should help you get a sense of it. Being a kid that didn't have money sucked, especially when you had to choose to buy a new controller instead of a game. All of us opted for these Mad Catz controllers for the GameCube because they were cheap. You know why they were cheap? Because they suck. Both the analog and the C-stick were complete garbage. Aside from simply breaking, whether by physically snapping off or simply not responding, they would also suddenly get the inputs confused in several different ways. Among these include the controller always pushing in one direction, even when you aren't touching it, the calibration being off, which made the controls completely wonky, and even in some cases inputs getting mixed up, which meant up was left and left was right, and so on. And if you ever bought these used, We all feel sorry for you.
Number 3.
The Alpha Grip AG5. Have you ever had an older person look at the controller you're holding and complain that there's too many buttons and it looks confusing? This is the controller they see in your hand. Completely impractical, illogical, non-ergonomic, and just plain ugly. The Alpha Grip should have never existed. I've been a gamer my whole life, and I literally don't even know how to hold this. And all I see is one analog nub thing. I literally don't understand how this came to be.
Number 2.
SuperPad 64. Similar to that GameCube controller, this was the cheapest alternative to the N64 controller. If you came over to play at a friend's house, you probably held this in your hands at some point. There are two big fails with this controller. First, not having side handles makes it really difficult and uncomfortable just to hold. And second, the analog sticks were notorious for just randomly snapping off. As the saying goes, buy it nice or buy it twice.
Number 1.
Intel Wireless Gamepad. This controller had great responsiveness and was innovative in that it was wireless way before wireless was a thing. It was also very easy to snap in half and looked like a sex toy. I'm not joking, there are literal sex toys that look exactly like this thing. Aside from building a controller with basically no structural integrity, they just made it weird. Why developers feel the need to fix what isn't broken, I will never know, but I guess that's the price of innovation. And that's it for this list. If there are any controllers that should have been mentioned, let me know in the comments. If you liked this video, check out my other videos and feel free to hit that like button. I'm Kai Morgan, and as always, thanks for watching Ink Ribbon.